Well, our special guest on Absolutely Famous today is a champion golfer, Shani Waugh, from the beautiful Western Australian town of Bunbury. Shani turned professional in 1991, played on the US-based LPGA Tour, the Ladies European Tour and the Australian LPGA, and scored 7 professional wins and almost bagged a major, the US Open in 2002. How close was that, Shani? Welcome to Absolutely Famous. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Let's go straight to the US Open. How was that? I mean, you've got to be some golfer to get to that stage.
I think it's probably, when I look back on my career, I think it was the biggest week for many reasons, but just to try and keep it short, I was in contention the whole week. I played on Saturday in the second last group with Annika Sorenstam, who was the out-and-out best player in the world at the time. So I had to, that was a pretty long 5 hours in my life, by playing against such an absolute superstar. And then the last day I played in the second last group again, but this time with Julie Inkster, who was also a superstar and until recently was still actively playing on tour. And she, she was my hero because, she was a mother and she balanced being a mum and a golfer, and she was a great person. I wouldn't say she took me under her wing, but she a couple of times would take me out, we'd go to a bar or something like that and have a beer, when I was a bit upset about my golf or something like that. And she would just talk to me from a very level point of view. So playing with her was kind of funny because she's kind of my friend, but at the same time she was my foe for the day. But I've said before that I knew pretty early on in the round and the last day that it probably wasn't going to be me holding the trophy, not because I felt like I couldn't play well. It was just that there was someone that I was playing with that actually wanted it 10 times more than I did. And I just couldn't conjure up that amount of passion and desire to win as what I witnessed that day. It was just incredible to be playing alongside her and just trying to keep my own head on just so I didn't embarrass myself playing against the person that I felt was going to win right from probably the third hole.
Was that Anika?
No, that was Julie.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yeah, no, and I think because it was the US Open and it was her home open, I think that's why she was so passionate. I think she's a pretty passionate person anyway, and she loves winning. But I think there's no greater tournament for an American to win than the US Open. So, she was super fired up for that, and plus, she was staring down Annika, even though, albeit Annika was in the group behind her, she couldn't really stare at her. But I think there's leaderboards everywhere, and it was just an incredible sporting thing to be a part of inside the ropes. And I just felt like a big player for the day, and which was good because I think it allowed me to just concentrate on my own game and end up finishing third because those two were going head to head, and I was just cruising along in the background. It's quite nice, actually.
It's a pretty good third in the US Open. I think any golf would take that every day.
Oh yeah, it didn't really hit me until I was in the scorer's tent afterwards with Julie, and we played together, and we were signing our cards, and there was a TV screen in there, and she was obviously up watching the TV screen to see what Annika was doing on the 18th, and she was really nervous. And I said, look, she has to hold her second shot on a par 4 on the 18th to force a playoff with you, Julie. I think you can relax. And she's like, she was so manic. She's like, oh yeah, but she could probably do that. She'll probably do that. She's that good. She's that good. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, on the screen comes up like the prize money breakdown for the tournament. And I just happened to look up, and I saw first prize was whatever, I can't remember, and then I saw third prize, and it was like, I can't remember. I think it was $200,000 or something like that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with that? That was my first thing I thought about. I thought, because you try not to think about the money when you're playing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when I'd finished and I saw that graphic come up, I was like, what am I going to do? I felt like this kid that all of a sudden had this adult responsibility. And I remember thinking, Jeepers, what am I going to do with that? So that was a pretty cool moment. I remember that vividly. And then obviously watching Julie, like she had ants in her pants. She just couldn't sit still watching Annika finish the last hole. So once Annika didn't hold her second shot, you could see the relief on Julie's face, and it was a pretty cool moment to share with her.
So money wasn't one of your motivators for playing professional? Main ones, I think.
Definitely not. Very rarely did I think about money. I don't think there's any space in your brain when you're competing to think about things like that. Certainly I had moments in my career, because I was on tour for 17 years. I certainly had moments on my in my career where I was thinking, geez, I really need to make the cut this week. One minute your bank account's quite flush, and the next minute, a couple of months later, there's not a lot of money in there because the expenses are quite high. And, you get used to living with a bit of money in your account, and then all of a sudden you have a few bad weeks and you don't have the same amount of money, so you start stressing. So off the course, it was a little bit of a focus. It certainly didn't motivate me to play. I think sometimes it motivated me to concentrate in some respects because the bank account was getting a bit low at the time. So it fluctuated a lot. But during the rounds, definitely not. Golf's too hard. Like, you just don't have room for it to be thinking about those sorts of things.
No, of course you had great rival with a couple of your Aussie mates, Carrie Webb and Rachel Hetherington, who were great foes as well. Did you have a little bit of fun together with the fellow Aussies?
A bit. I think the most fun time of the year was, and this was nothing that I really knew a lot about, was during the State of Origin. When the State of Origin was on, like being a West Australian, I had no interest in it, but just to watch the two of them go at it. I think Carrie's a Queenslander and Rachel's from New South Wales originally, and they'd play tricks on each other, and I could always tell who'd won just by looking at their faces in the locker room. So that was pretty interesting. But my locker was next to Carrie because they're always in alphabetical order, and Carrie was so focused on what she was doing that there wasn't a lot of banter or anything like that with her. Rachel, similar, they were the best players on the tour, so they're not there to talk to me. It's not that they ignored me or anything. They were, they're very polite and nice and everything. And a few towards the end of my career anyway, we set up a bit of a tradition where once a month all the Australians would go out for dinner. So it'd be all the Australian players, the Australian caddies, and actually that was a really nice way to finish my career because you actually sat down for dinner and talked to these people who were actually human, and people that felt subhuman, or not subhuman, but superhuman when they're playing, because Carrie was such a great player and so was Rachel. And I knew them as these legendary golfers, not really as people. So to have dinner with them afterwards, towards the end, and talk about the footy and talk about Australia, and every now and again Rachel would say to me in the locker room, "Hey Shani, I've got some Vegemite this week. Just go to my locker and help yourself." And little things like that, which are really strong memories of mine. Like even just going to her locker and opening up the door and just having a sniff to smell because I used to travel with Australian sunscreen, Aerogard, and then when Rachel said she had Vegemite, I'd go to her locker and just smell it, because you don't realise you're a little bit homesick until you smell those sorts of memories of your childhood and that sort of thing, and you think, oh yeah, cool. So Rachel was really kind in that respect, like just letting me know that there was some Vegemite on offer.
So you played, the tours you played, is the American tour the hardest? Yeah,
definitely. I think for a non-Japanese person to play on the Japanese tour would have been really challenging, just with the language barrier and probably how expensive it would be to travel around Japan. But I think in terms of the competition, the LPGA in America definitely the hardest. But at the same time, because it was the hardest, it also came with the most reward financially. So if you had a few good months or whatever, and you could make some good money, and you could actually, so that kind of made it easier in a sense. Whereas playing on the European tour, which I did for quite a long time, the money just wasn't there. So while the competition wasn't as fierce, or the depth wasn't the same, I should say, the rewards weren't there either. So it was always a bit of a challenge to play in Europe, and travelling around, trying to find accommodation in Europe, in different countries, and again, a little bit of a language barrier, which I quite enjoyed because I love languages. I liked to test myself that I could read the pizza menu in every European country, at least understand what I was going to order. But in America, and then that's when I decided it was time to give it up, was when I played quite well in the tournament and missed the cut by one. And I thought, wow, the depth on this tour now is so strong that I either need to re-motivate and focus on my career, or I need to walk away. And I remember thinking, well, I think enough's enough. And so I retired.
Yeah, I guess you retired, as you say, you'd reached your peak at that stage.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I'd probably started a little bit on the downward spiral, in the sense that I don't think I was as dedicated to practice. I think, I'd started to have a glass of wine, occasionally with dinner, which I didn't do for the longest time when I was on tour. And just little signals like that I wasn't 100% in the game. Everything's easy in hindsight, and I look back now and I think, 17 years is a long time. So to get to 15 years of, being pretty dedicated and disciplined, and then to maybe lose that focus for the last year or two, it's not a bad effort, but I think the writing was on the wall. And
Excuse me.
I think for me it was the depth, like realising that day that the depth on the LPGA was huge. We had we probably had 20 girls from South Korea that they could all, you felt like they never missed a cut. So that's 20 players that were taking up 60 of the spots of the cut, and then obviously all the champions as well. And I just remember thinking, this is a big hill to climb now, so it's time to give it up. And I was probably 36 or 37, and I wanted to have a child, so it wasn't such a big challenge to walk away, because I had something to walk away to. And whereas and I've said this before, I think some athletes really struggle with retirement because they don't get to retire on their own terms. And I think I feel like I was retiring on my own terms, which I think made it a heap easier.
I guess also when you're playing, it'd be difficult for the golf to not be all-encompassing in your life. You'd have to be careful of that you actually have another part of your life while you're playing pro golf.
Yeah, and I think I did a pretty good job with that respect. A lot of my friends had children while we were on tour, so either they brought children onto tour or they had them while we were on tour. So, we used to rent apartments, and we had little kids running around. Quite often they'd say, "Hey, Shani, can you pick up such and such from daycare today after you finished?" and take them back to the apartment or the hotel or whatever. So, it was really I didn't find it that hard to switch off from the golf. And probably to my detriment in some respects, I think I found it very easy to say, oh, well, that wasn't a great round or whatever. And I know from talking to Rachel Hetherington that she was much more, she really looked at her rounds and analysed them, where could I have been better, whereas I just didn't do that. And I think that was probably part of the reason that she was a lot better than me, was the fact that she actually took it. She was so professional about it, and I guess I was probably unprofessional to a degree. I was able to let go of it, which was probably good for my mental health, but I found it, I realised that she was much more disciplined and dedicated than me, and I wasn't. And I couldn't expect to be as good as them because I wasn't as invested in it as what they were.
Still a wonderful career. You can look back with a lot of pride in, that's for sure. So are you involved? You were involved with golf coaching. You're still involved coaching or playing the game now?
Yeah, when I retired, I realised I didn't have any skills other than how to hit a golf ball. So and actually the last year on tour, I'd started to feel like a bit of interest in the mechanics of the golf swing and stuff like that. I really didn't know a lot about it, but which probably sounds funny to people listening, that a golf professional doesn't know a lot about the golf swing. But you didn't want to know too much back then. I felt like you didn't want to know too much. You wanted to just be told, you need to improve this part of your golf swing, so you go about working on that. So the coaching side of it it fascinated me a little bit because I didn't know a lot about it. But then I realised I felt like I had a lot to give in terms of not so much the love of the sport, because I don't think I ever really loved golf, but just the experience I had on tour, like understanding what it feels like to stand over a 3-foot putt. That means a lot, and that's all relative. The club, the 18 handicap club golfer, if he or she's standing over a putt on the last hole to break their handicap or win the C grade club championship or something like that, it's exactly the same. There's no difference, and I keep impressing that on people. Like I would have been no more nervous than what you are, but we got a chance to work on how we managed our nerves more often, because we were playing every day of the week, whereas the average club golfer plays once or maybe twice a week. You just don't get the same amount of opportunities to work on it, whereas we just had it every hole, it felt like. So we developed strategies to deal with it, and I think that's where I thought, well, I can really help these young people, deal with those sorts of stresses. I now realise that having a psychology degree probably would have helped as well, helping the kids with it. But also, I'm also very mindful that my strategies aren't the only strategies. So I'm very quick to, once the kids get to a certain level, to actually encourage them to maybe, if they tell me that they're concerned about the way they deal with pressure and stuff like that, I also am very quick to say, well, I think we need to get some outside help here, because, my strategies aren't all the strategies, and they might not even be the right ones for you. So I'm quite quick to bring in other people to help with the kids. So that's been part of my business since 2008. My coaching business, but you've got to develop the players first to be able to get them to that level where you can really help them. I use my experience to help them. So it's been quite a journey, and it's a tough gig, developing young athletes.
Oh, I bet it is. And of course, you're on another journey too, a cricket journey, playing for the Colts Club there in Bunbury, over in the beautiful WA. And how are you enjoying cricket? I was lucky enough to umpire your match the other week. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I absolutely love it. Like I just said before, that I don't think I ever really loved golf, and I know now that I've been playing cricket that I actually didn't love the sport of golf as much as I love the sport of cricket, and maybe because there's not as much pressure on me playing cricket, because I'm not doing it for a living, that's for sure, because I wouldn't eat if I was doing cricket for a living. But I just love it. I love the fact that I've been given another chance to, at my age, to play sport. And because when I had my child 12 and a half years ago, I kind of felt like I was shutting up shop in terms of playing sport. And now I'm sort of kicking myself that I didn't sort of have my child and then sort of get straight back into a sport, because I was pretty dormant physically for 6 or 7 years after, well, probably longer, 8 or 9 years after my daughter was born. And then when I did start playing cricket, I was like, I'm so out of shape. And, I love to bat, but I can't bat for very long, because I get so tired running between the wickets because I'm so unfit. And then I get so sore for a couple of days after the games that it's only towards the end of the week, like Thursday, like today, where I'm actually starting to think, oh yeah, I could probably play cricket this weekend, because I've sort of recovered. But I'm loving all that side of it, and I love, our team at Colts, we have an age range of this year we have an age range of 13 through to 53, which is me. So we've got a 40-year age range, and I love the vibrancy that the kids bring to the team. I love, the older girls loving their sport and contributing to the team, and I'm the captain, so managing everyone and trying to win the games, but not being too competitive about it. It's a fine line, but I'm really enjoying that side of it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like I say, I got to umpire your game the other week and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll tell you what, the women's sledging, it's way more humorous than the boys.
Well, we're Leschnault, the club that you've got some ties to.
Yeah.
We love playing against them. It's actually difficult for us to say, come on, girls, we want to win this game. As much as we love the Leschnault girls, we actually need to win this game. So we try and rein it in a little bit, but it's hard when you're playing against people that you really like, and I think the two clubs have got similar philosophies in terms of, well, especially for the women's game, and I think for the men's as well. Developing the young players. And so when we're out there playing against Leschnault, there's a couple of kids playing for Leschnault and a couple of the older girls like me, and it is funny. And there's a couple of very funny girls in the Leschnault team, and it's been exciting to see a couple of the mums who have probably grown, spent their adult life with their children just sitting in a chair watching them play cricket. All of a sudden they're realising that they can play too, which I think is a great part of the women's game, and they're playing. And I noticed that one of the girls that we played against at Leschnault, actually two of them, one of them was your daughter.
Michelle, yeah.
They actually scored some runs, and that must have been such a thrill for them. So in their second game of competitive cricket, they've actually managed to score some runs, which I think they'll just go from strength to strength now. And I think they'll play for as long as they can. Yeah,
they're totally hooked on the game. I got a text with a photo during the weekend. I was thrilled for them. Yeah.
Great.
Shani, wonderful to talk to you, and I hope to catch up with you again when I come over and visit Bunbury in Western Australia. And keep up that cricket. I'll be looking at the scoreboard, and when you get your first century, I'll be messaging my congratulations to you. I'm sure that won't be long.
Well, we'll see if my legs can hold out for that long. I think that would be a great goal. But I think I'll start with making my next 50.
Good on you. Well done.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Shani. Lovely to talk to you.